You're listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. Join us as we explore new frontiers in consciousness, science, and evolution. And now here's your host, Karen Curry Parker.
What a boring world we would live in if everyone was the same. The evolution of humanity is dependent on people who want things to stay the same, and also on people who are weird. There are those of us who are designed to be different, not out of rebellion, not to prove some point, not out of a youthful need to differentiate ourselves from our parents or our lineage, but because we are here to change the world, to take bold action to expand the understandings and the possibilities for humanity, to be the carriers of cultural mutation. Because without mutation, we'd never grow and expand. Weird people bring us music, art, poetry, stories, scientific breakthroughs, cultural trends, and so much more. Weird people change the way we see ourselves, open our minds up to new potential solutions, and help us see reality with fresh eyes. Weird people help us understand what has come before with a new perspective. They teach us courage, inspire us, and ultimately push us to grow beyond the limitations of what is known and to journey valiantly into the unknown. They teach us how to become the heroes of our own lives. We are who we are collectively because we stand on the shoulders of the weird ones who've come before, those people who have had the courage to not only think about truth, but to speak truth and act on truth and help us expand who we know ourselves to be. Welcome to Quantum Conversations. My name is Karen Curry Parker, and I'm really excited to share today's guest with you. Jacob Nordby is a poet, an essayist, and the author of the book Blessed Are the Weird, a manifesto for the creatives, and a novel called The Divine Arsonist. Jacob teaches writing workshops calls it the Creative Unboot Camp, which I love that, and works as an intuitive coach for writers and other creatives, among other things that he's too modest to list. So I'm excited because I have been following Jacob for many years now and have actually the blessing of being not only one of his biggest fans, but a friend. And the poet piece, Jacob, I didn't know you were a poet, except I've seen your poetry on Facebook. I know you officially called yourself a poet. I'm so excited to have you be here and share your creative self with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Karen. And by the way, the honor is mine. I mean, you have been such a friend it falls short. You've really been a guide to me and have spoken into my life at some critical times when I really needed help. And I fall back on words you've spoken probably more than you'd be even comfortable to know.
Oh, well, good. It goes both ways. So I have to start this conversation because one of the things that I love about you is you use really provocative language, and it's language that, in your poetry and in the work that you offer, you offer these beautiful, oftentimes, I don't know how to describe it. It's like I read your language and I feel like I get through this beautiful passage and then you shift gears and my brain splits and I have to take the other half of my brain and go galloping after the part that you just took on a wild romp. And it's so profound and it's so powerful because in the end of any linguistic journey I've ever been on with you, there's a lesson. It's like you speak to this place in all of us that is seeking to be accepted for who we are, and you bring us around to the heart of who we are with your words. So one of the things, though, that you do is you then throw in these words like the word weird, and you throw it into this pool of meaning that causes us to go, wait, I have to completely redefine what is this word weird. So let's start with what exactly, in your definition in Jacob land, what exactly makes someone weird? What do you mean by weird?
Wow. I mean, Karen, I spent the years from 2012 when I first wrote the little piece that ended up going viral, and I had no idea it was going to do that, I spent those next several years between that time and the time that I decided I needed to write a book about it, trying to figure that out for myself. And that's why it took me so long to write the book, because it was an evolving question. And do you mind if I just read the short thing that started this whole deal?
Not at all. Go for it.
All right. So this happened in a car on the side of the road in Austin, Texas, when I was living down there after having had a meltdown of my identity and lost everything, and was restarting my life, and was feeling deeply strange and deeply other, deeply out of place in this world, Karen. And this was the first time in my life that I had been able to acknowledge that this is how I felt, honestly, for myself. I looked back over a life where I had tried so hard to fit in and so hard to achieve success as defined by, other people, by the standards, the common standards of success. And outwardly I had it all. And then when it exhausted me to the point where it just all came crashing down, I had the painful but tremendous gift of spending some years finding out, oh, wow, this is who I really am, or at least the beginnings of that journey, the trailhead. And so I pulled over beside the road one day in Austin, Texas, and I was looking desperately for a piece of paper, and I think I found the back of an envelope, literally true story, and scribbled these words down. Blessed are the weird people, poets, misfits, writers, mystics, heretics, painters, and troubadours, for they teach us to see the world through different eyes. I wrote that for myself because that's how I felt. And I could feel all these different archetypes, all these different voices and people inside of me, all of them. And I shared it somewhere, I think on Facebook. I made a little picture and stuck the words on there and shared it. And I had done that with all sorts of things before and didn't expect much of it. And it started to take off. And then it got being shared hundreds of times, then thousands of times, and then other people made their own versions of it, and then it was being shared tens of thousands. I don't know how many millions of times it's been shared now, and I really didn't expect that to be the case. I always felt so alone that I discovered that I wasn't the only person who felt that way.
I actually have to tell you that last year for the holidays, my best friend gave me a T-shirt with that on it.
You're kidding me. I haven't heard that story before.
I am not kidding you. I was like, hey, I know where this came from.
How funny.
But, I think the piece that's so profound that you give people is you give people permission to embrace who they really are. And I think that in the context, when we're talking about evolving the world, evolving to a place where everybody recognizes that the place they occupy in the divine unfolding of the world is unique and important, that we are all threads of a tapestry. And if, you got a pull or a run in the tapestry, it's bad for the rug, right?
Yeah.
You have this, you have done this beautiful job of kind of taking these archetypes, the poet, the misfit, the troubadour, and kind of spoken a little bit in this book into what do each one of these archetypes really mean for us on the inside. So talk to me for just a minute about those archetypes a little bit and the gifts that each one of these archetypes brings to the rest of us.
Yeah, thanks. And Karen, this isn't just a reflexive, appreciation. I want you to know, I think one of the reasons we're friends is because that's exactly what you do in your work too, is share with people, hey, the depths of you, the map of you, the DNA of you is this incredible treasure trove. And the parts of you that have always felt awkward or trying to work in situations that didn't work. You did that for me. And so I love that we get to share this right now. And my side of that is, in fact, that's one thing I've always envied is people like you who have this work that's deep and it's very detailed and it opens up understanding on the intellectual and then the feeling and the other levels. And it helps people actually learn how to integrate themselves, their truth selves, into a world that in some cases felt hostile or strange for them. And then all of a sudden things begin to flow better. And so, yeah, it's my pleasure to share from my side, which tends to be a little bit more on the poetic, fanciful, imaginative, or whatever. And, whatever you want to call that. In fact, you helped me become, a few years ago when we first had a session, you helped me become better aware that that's who I am and why I am. And that actually helped me finish my book. Yeah, Karen, I had no idea when this came through for me, as I often don't. In fact, some of the things that I share that end up connecting with people I feel the most awkward, the most vulnerable about writing down. And so when I wrote these words down, I didn't know. I didn't have a plan for, what they meant or why they showed up. What I discovered, much like the word weird itself predates English, and it goes way, way back into Germanic times and Norse times. And there were the Weird sisters who tended Odin, the Allfather, who was hanging on the great tree Yggdrasil. And the Norns, the Weird sisters, Wyrd, they were known as the Fates, and they controlled the destiny, things to come and things that had been and the present. And I had no idea, of course, when I wrote down "Blessed are the weird." So then I'm writing this book and I'm researching like something about the word weird. Why did that show up? Well, then I discovered, oh wow, this is something much deeper. And pre-Shakespeare, weird meant honorable. It meant set apart. It meant, this sense of destiny and power. And then Shakespeare used it in one of his plays, and it became, weird as in off-putting or strange or something like that. And so then it's developed into, weird stuff is stuff we don't really like to look at anymore. And each one of these archetypes, the writers and the poets and misfits and mystics and heretics and troubadours and painters, each one of them has their own surprising depth. I discovered, for example, that the troubadours came from a region in France, and they were these heretics. They wove into their songs, into their love songs, they wove this heresy that the Catholic Church was trying to stamp out at the time. And they were actually able to then sing the songs that sounded like love songs to, the medieval times, the medieval ears. They would go around and travel, and they were actually singing code. They were carrying this message that the church didn't want anybody to hear, for example. And so did the painters. And, of course, writers have always been, the pen is mightier than the sword. So writers have always been kind of at the forefront, usually at, some sort of revolution. Not all writers, but they've definitely been there, stirring up the mix, causing trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think people revel in their weirdness. They really like it, in spite of the fact that they struggle with their own individuality. When they can find that weirdness within them, they kind of revel in it. So do you think everybody is, to a certain degree, weird?
Well, and I'm talking to the lady who, really has done a lot of pioneering work with human design and sharing that with the world. So I believe at a deep level, everyone at the soul level, or whatever we want to call that, yeah, we are absolutely fingerprints, with our incredible uniqueness. Now, what I have come to realize is that not everyone has the commitment to go all the way through and find that. And so when people show up and say, hey, everybody's weird, yeah, we're all weird, so that's normal. And after I posted that thing that became this viral thing, people began to know me as the weird guy, and so they would come and they'd post pictures of people making goofy faces and all this stuff, and it would irritate me. I couldn't figure out what's going on. Why do I? And I'm like, you guys, it's not about the purple hair. It's not about the tattoo. It's not about just being goofy and saying, I'm weird, you have to accept me. No, there was something different about the blessed weird, and it took me a long time. So in chapter 10 of my book, I explore that question of what is this thing that we're calling weird, and why is there a blessed weird, and is that an exclusive club? And the answer for me is no, but I went through the chapter talking about it. And one thing, some of the attributes, some of the different, experiences, the sense of purpose, the high sensitivities or perceptions, the fact that, weird people have personal comfort tends to be not our highest priority. It's like we're not as committed to being comfortable as we are to discovering life and having these deep experiences. And I find, Karen, that a lot of people who, read the book or show up, when I ask them, hey, do you feel like you've had several lifetimes inside of this one lifetime? They go, oh my God, absolutely. I've lived like 4 different lifetimes already. Just in this, I'm only 30 years old. And I've already, and of course you're laughing. I'm sure you've had several lifetimes already too.
Yep.
Yep. Well, and that's what's interesting to me is that yields a perspective. So people see through a certain reality tunnel, and those who never have that reality tunnel that is woven, it's a semiotic web that's woven of experiences and conditioning and imprinting and, family of origin and culture of origin and all this stuff. people who get that reality tunnel rattled very, very sharply at some point in their life, they have to experience life in a broader sense. Like, oh wow, there's a whole different reality that I never even saw before. And they learn to adapt. They learn to be creative. They learn to be flexible. And that's, to me, what characterizes, among other things, the blessed weird, is that they have learned that life doesn't have to be one certain way, which means that they are more capable than the average population of critical thinking. They're more capable of empathy. They're more capable of finding solutions where it appears there are none, or that when people want to fall back into merely the status quo, which hasn't ever been working. And the other thing that I think is the most important attribute of all, Karen, and that is this abnormal desire for what is real. We can't abide a life that's not real. We cannot, like living a fake life, or one that no longer matches who we are as we discover more about that. That's toxic. It's death. And, it'd be like one of your students who shows up and has been with you for a few years, and they've really deeply discovered who they are. And they're like, they're a manifesting generator, for example. And then they go try to live in in an environment where they're expected to be a different design. Well, they could no more do that once they've discovered who they really are and how it works better. Like, why would you just do that? And so what I've discovered is that weird people, whether they know it or not, are redefining the word weird, and they're also redefining the word success. And I think that's really probably one of the core items for our discussion today, is redefining what does success mean to me, not what does it mean to the culture at large.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things we talk about a lot on Quantum Conversations is the nature of shifting our consciousness and awareness to becoming more actively quantum beings. And part of what entails being a conscious quantum being is knowing how to tap into not just your own personal creativity, but the fundamental creativity that the universe has out there. We are in a place, I think, in our collective, on the planet, facing some really interesting challenges right now. And for us to be able to resolve those challenges, we are probably going to have to stretch out beyond what we consider to be the known into the unknown and pluck some kind of innovation out of that quantum field and collapse it into our reality to be able to discover what we need to do to move forward. I always think about, one of the things I tell my students all the time is, there was a time when somebody sat around going, I think I'm going to go to the moon. And everybody was like, oh man, you're weird, right? You are
Absolutely.
Weird.
Yeah.
But that concept, that idea, that fundamental creative seed was eventually made manifest by holding on to that idea. And I think, to be quite frank with you, it was made manifest because of a heck of a lot of courage from a lot of people who were willing to stand up to the naysayers and say, I know you think this is nuts, but I have to do this. I've got to fly and see if I can break the sound barrier. I've got to see what's next. That sense of bravery that comes from being willing to hold on to the creative possibilities to stretch us out of the known into the unknown.
Boy, wow, yeah. You should write a book about the weird people, Karen.
Yeah, you already did that. I have something different. So
I feel strongly, in fact, just today I posted a little thought about curiosity, and what you just talked about is this sense of curiosity that says, wait a minute, we've been doing it this way the whole time, or this has been said that it's impossible. What I've discovered is that curiosity is kind of a magic wand, or it's a key for those who like a little more, tangible, practical kinds of metaphors. It's a key in the lock. So without curiosity, true critical thinking and true empathy is impossible. And that's one thing I find that right now in our world. So you just brought up the moon, the moon landing and the process it took to get there. Every critical breakthrough in human history has come at the cost of somebody's courage, somebody's tremendous curiosity, who said, you know what, I can put my foot over the horizon and I feel confident that I'm not going to fall off the edge of the earth. somebody had to do that when they said the earth was flat or square or whatever. Somebody said, I don't know. I'm going to sail to the edge of the horizon and find out if I fall off. If I do, then, well, it was probably worth the journey. So yeah, right now we're facing things in our world that are going to require the deepest levels of curiosity and critical thinking and empathy. And that's one thing I feel so strongly that we're being challenged to embrace at a different level than we probably ever have before, because the factors in this new renaissance, and Karen, I mean, I know a lot of people look at the world and say it's just a complete disaster at the moment.
Oh, no way. Yeah.
Right? No, I know. Nobody said that. But it feels that way. But that's what the foment that we're experiencing right now, the upheaval and the turmoil, that is characteristic of every renaissance. And I feel like we're in the greatest renaissance the world has ever seen right now. So the opportunity for tremendous breakthrough beyond anything humans have ever experienced is ripe. Also, because of our position in the force field, this potential energy that we have, as we've risen to these heights, the potential for true chaos is also very present. We can't deny either thing. So the potential for greatness is here, potential for chaos is here. And what determines the difference between that is this waking up as individuals to becoming really deeply conscious and aware of who we really are, which is why I've always loved your work, becoming truly aware of who we really are, and then growing into that on an individual, because none of us can grow into it on a collective level. Right. I can't grow to the whole world as a collective thing. That's too much. It's too big. But I can commit to deeply growing into myself. There was a student of Carl Jung's, Karen, or a patient, a client, and came and was, deeply troubled by the world back then. Of course, the world is always going to be ending. In every age, the world is always almost ready to come to an end, just so we're clear. But this patient had been troubled and was paranoid and was freaking out. And, Jung had been working with this person for a long time. And this patient came one day during a session and said, "Dr. Jung, can the world escape an apocalypse?" And Carl Jung sat there for a while, probably puffed on his pipe. And he finally answered and said, "Yes, but only if enough people do their inner work." And I've always loved that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a mathematical thing. When we look at the nature of needing to have a critical mass of consciousness to choose breakthrough versus chaos, I think it's the most important work we can do right now. And I think recognizing that embracing the weird, which I prefer to be the destiny and power of who you are, embracing that and having the courage to eschew the box or to say, hey, there is no box, is the most important thing we can do right now. The solutions we are seeking, if we are applying a strict, dense Newtonian model of physics that says it's the material world, the materialistic answers are not going to save us. But the capacity to say there's something bigger than us, there's an order and opportunity for us to have breakthrough and create at a level we've never created before.
Yes.
We're not going to tap into that if we don't embrace the truth of who we are first. So
agreed. Absolutely agreed. And Karen, that genius that you just spoke of, you didn't use that word, but that's what I heard in what you talked about. That does come from a different level of consciousness. And here's the wonderful thing that I'm so excited about in this conversation and in what's happening in the world. You know this about me, but your listeners won't. So I grew up in this fundamentalist Christian cult, very, very restricted in every possible way. You want to talk about a box? I lived in a very small box growing up. I didn't see a television show till I was 25. My first sip of beer wasn't until I was about 25. And so I know what it is to live in an absolutely restrictive, like mind control, behavior control, dress control, every single thing in the life is controlled and conformist and all this stuff. So I know exactly what that's like. What's fascinating to me is in the religious context of the word soul, or even, the New Age context, a lot of people who are more, intellectual or whatever, they're very uncomfortable with that term soul, because it seems like it might be freighted with some kind of, baggage that they're not okay with, what I love is right now in this time on earth, we are shedding so many of our previous beliefs about right and wrong, about God and the afterlife and everything else. And so we're getting lighter. So I'm going to use the word soul in sort of a poetic sense, but you might also transfer it, exchange it for the word genius. Because everybody who shows up in Blessed Are the Weird, in that troupe of characters, and also the list doesn't stop there, because we have brilliant, genius engineers in quantum physics and people who would be more looked at as not necessarily the creatives, because they're, and people in medicine and people in all these different disciplines. So it's not just people with an artsy gene that I'm talking about who make, visual art or music or something like that. It's anybody who taps into the genius of soul, something that's larger and more, but there's so much desire in it to express through this framework of me, of myself, and you as yourself and everyone, that anyone who's willing to go the rugged path to find out who I really am, and then open up to the genius or the muse, as they use, as they call it in music and writing and things like that, can find that every single person here has the potential to channel a very particular version of that genius into something that for them is both the hardest thing they've ever done and also the most fulfilling and also the most joyous and ultimately the most abundant thing they've ever done. And if enough people do that, humanity as we know it today gets to take a big step forward. That's my very firm conviction about where we are right now.
Amen. So Jacob's book, Blessed Are the Weird, is available on Amazon and other online and brick and mortar distributors. You can also find information about Jacob and his upcoming workshops and trainings and coaching with Jacob on his website, blessedaretheweird.com. Thank you again, Jacob, for joining us. I just want to end with one really fun thought that we can laugh at. Do you know what the difference is between a freak and a genius?
No.
Timing.
Karen, I can't believe this is over. Thank you for letting me be on your show.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. So I'm signing off, you guys. Karen Curry Parker, and I encourage you and I invite you and I celebrate you all in embracing the weird in you. Creativity is an essential part of determining what is real. It's also the transcendent force that allows us to redefine what is real. To be weird is to have a destiny and to be powerful, to be the vibration that inspires others to break free and recreate something new. Quantum physics shows us that there is a realm of infinite creative possibilities waiting for us to tap into it. But to be able to access creative solutions and inspired answers to the challenges facing us today, we have to do the work that unshackles us from the known, unchains us from our conditioning. We have to get out of the proverbial box and recognize that aspects of ourselves are going to want to stay in the box, cling to it, and even fight for it. Mutation without a return to stability is too unsettling, too destabilizing. To fully embrace your weird, you have to take stock of what is working and bring that aspect of yourself with you as you move into your full-on weirdness. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But you have to also have the courage to follow your own convictions. Differentiate yourself from the parts of you that you've outgrown or that aren't big enough to hold the truth of who you really are. And sometimes you have to be willing to risk that you will be on the fringe and that maybe no one else will follow you. But it won't matter because you're crafting a journey that entails the magnificence of you following your own conviction. And the heart and soul of yourself that gets unleashed with that courageous step will make you love yourself more than anyone else can ever love you. To do the right thing often requires that we defy the known and take a leap of faith. God bless the weird ones who have shown us what that powerful leap looks like. Want to discover just how weird you might be? Please visit our Quantum Conversations Facebook page where you can get your unique energy blueprint, the map of who you really are, your human design. Your human design is going to show you who you are, what you came here to do, and what you need to do to follow your heart. Because the world needs more people who have the courage to follow their hearts. Thank you for joining me for Quantum Conversations. This is Karen Curry Parker, encouraging you to fully express the beautiful weird that is the real you.
Thanks for listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. For more information, visit joyfulmission.com.